fact remains that they let us be here and develop for so many years that to let someone be out there, build a home and a lifestyle and a community, and then to all of a sudden say, okay, it's illegal because 20 years ago we said this. It's just, it's not the way it should be. Anybody can tell you that that's just not the way things are done. It's not fair. It's not right.
Hey guys, it's Matt, filming the end. Filming the final days of the Anchor Out floating community. This is Richardson Bay, just north of San Francisco. Was it 6 months ago? I made a video about this on this guy. He's a documentary filmmaker, Eric Swanson's original documentary. He went back. Now this video is 7 months old, but there's only, when he went back, there were only 30 boats left. And at this point, they would be all gone. We'll return to Bill's poster a little bit later in this presentation. He calls it the Richardson Reach Around Agency. It's the Richardson Bay Agency that represents all the rich people in Mill Valley and Tiburon and Sausalito that want these anchor outs out. And for anybody that doesn't remember my first video, or to bring you up to speed, in Richardson Bay, just north of San Francisco. I'll show you the map in just a moment. At one point, maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, there were hundreds of these boats anchored, people living full-time in Richardson Bay. One of the reasons they can do this, they have the protection of the bay with land on both sides, and Richardson Bay is between 8 and 20, 25 feet deep, so it's very easy to drop your anchor. There's not a lot of waves. You can't just go live in the ocean, for example. Richardson Bay is very conducive to this. And since the 60s, these boats started moving in. Some are not quite boats. Some transformed to little houses on styrofoam and things like that. And it's that type of, quote, boat that has allowed the authority and the governments to come in and basically kick all these people out. If you don't want to stick with this video, the final word is it's 2025 and they're basically all gone. As of 7 months ago in the follow-up documentary from this guy, there were 30 left. At one point, again, 20 to 30 years ago, there were hundreds. So, of course, let me show you a picture in a moment of the houseboats that are tied up to docks that are real postal addresses that pay. If they're there 10 years, they'll pay $1 million in property tax, and they're completely legitimate. They're $1 million properties, even though they're houseboats, maybe tied up to a dock. That's fine. And that's all, the rich people are okay with that. These are the people probably complaining because just 30 feet in front of them or 50 feet out into the water is one of these anchor out boats that they're not paying any taxes, of course. They're not paying any property tax. I'm sure I doubt they file a 1040 income. So of course the person just 40 feet away with the houseboat, officially anchored or officially moored to the dock is paying collectively in taxes, depending on their income, and millions of dollars over so many decades. And the person just 30 feet away, this is what they're truly upset about. 40, 50 feet out in the water, paying nothing. But let me just get the final word on this, guys. There's so much to talk about here, but the governments really should have no leg to stand on. And I was going to say, if the world were real. Well, we know it's not. We know this thing called NOTNLC is now controlling everything. But in terms of just, case law and precedent, nobody owns the water. I mean, it's literally that simple. You could say some of these boats aren't seaworthy and they're just boxes on styrofoam, and some really aren't even considered boats. But you know what? Technically, if anything were real, nobody owns the water. They would have every right to live on the water without an address, without paying any taxes. The government agencies or local communities or townships or counties should have no authority other than, at some point there is reasonableness. I know people in our community, any form of, everybody here, it's not cool if you don't say you just want complete anarchy. If things were real and governments weren't on the download and there wasn't this thing called NOTNLC, there is a degree of reasonableness where if one of these boats, trash is being piled up and floating into the bay, of course, there should be an authority to deal with that. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. The bottom line is, in the most simple sense, if you're living on the water, there should be absolutely nothing that any government can do to you or say to you. But that is the precedent too over the last several hundred years. But Knottnilk has kind of grown in its influence, as we all can tell.
But just to have people out there, you know, living on an old cracker box, sitting on some styrofoam, waiting for it to fall apart, and then just leave it and let somebody else pay for cleaning it up. I just don't see how you can justify that in a major resource like San Francisco Bay.
Okay, guys, for the next 20 seconds, I had to kill the sound. Could you imagine if they hit me with a damn strike? Some piece of shit little old public access documentary from 1989. But this is a glimpse into yesteryear, before potentially the tales of chemicals, before the Knottnilk took complete control in the last century. Guys, there's no doubt that our type of person, takes the side of the anchor outs over big government, of course. But it's not all one-sided. No, it's not cool to say that there's actually a middle ground, and those on the side of the government, at least in this case, have a little bit of a case. That's not cool to say in this community. But I'm showing you a picture of a video I'll play in just about 15 or 20 seconds. You'll see. I mean, it's not as simple as people living on their sailboats. Some of these are literally like there's plywood on top of styrofoam. And this guy collects junk, barge after barge of just junk. And there is not a middle ground, but it's not completely one-sided. Should you be able to anchor in Richardson Bay and have 12 barges full of junk and trash and hoarder stuff, and if you could keep it perfectly, some people would say yes. But if it starts to break off, cans floating all over the bay, that's when there needs to be a middle ground. Of course, 95%, I take the side of the anchor outs, but it's not completely one-sided.
Yeah, some people are unhappy with Rudy. He gets a little overboard with his collecting, but actually, in a way, he does a service on the water because he collects all the junk that's floating around. And he recycles it. He sells it like flotation boats. You get a sunken boat and pull it up and fix it up. So, in a way, he's doing a public service. Some people are offended by this.
Okay, here is San Francisco. This is the Bay Bridge over to Oakland, the Golden Gate Bridge to Marin, Sausalito, Tiburon, Larkspur, etc. And then here is Richardson Bay here. And I forgot to mention this. I did mention this in the last video. That video may no longer exist, guys, because I got a copyright strike for something else, and I removed basically every video that had other documentary videos in it. I had to, for the existence or continual existence of this channel. So there it is. Let me try to see if can I move this over. Yeah, Richardson Bay. This Richardson Bay had been designated under some sort of federal Coast Guard jurisdiction, which made it harder for the surrounding counties, and as Bill put it, the Richardson Bay Reach Around Authority, to get to these people. They were able to clear out people that just dock and houseboats, and in areas where, let's say, the rich people complained, they were able to get rid of people all over San Francisco Bay many, many years or decades before. But it was because of this, some sort of federal designation for Richardson Bay, that just for decade after decade, until just till a few months ago, they were able, the anchor outs were able to dock here or to anchor out here with continual harassment. Of course, the Richardson Bay Authority, the Richardson Bay Reach Around, used every single legal maneuver in the book with unlimited budget, with unlimited ability to hire lawyers to make, staying within whatever federal guidelines or whatever federal statute or who knows what that was over Richardson Bay. They did the best that they could over the last 40 years to harass everybody out. But now I guess it's I don't know the details of it. It's official per the guy's last documentary. This is Angel Island here. They're Tiburon here, Sausalito. They're all gone at this point. Now, the old public access documentary from 1989, of course, we want to be fair and balanced, and they show the perspective and viewpoints of the anchor out people, of which this guy, of course, is one, and then they show the perspective of the Richardson Bay Reach Around Authority and the government that represents the good people on the shore paying taxes and doing the right thing. But, it's so funny you can tell instantly, and of course, Pootie Tang Award, but who is playing what role in this reality? The freedom-loving people, the anchor-outs, of course, they just have a look about them, a way about them, something we, of course, identify with. Wait till you hear this guy speak later, how smart and intelligent this guy is. Then they'll switch over during the documentary to one of these bureaucratic people. Do you think this guy, if you had to guess, is he an anchor-out, freedom-loving person on the bay, or does he represent the Richardson Bay Reach Around in the Marin Authority? Yeah, they have a look about them, a way about them, and we would basically say, asshole. So we'll have a test. We'll maybe keep doing this for the rest of the video. Would you say, if you had to guess, this is one of the Marin authorities, San Francisco or California, Sacramento authority figures on the bay? Or do you think this person is an anchor out? Go ahead. They know. Yeah, everybody plays their role here, even us, of course. And of course, these are the people that we are 99% compatible, not the authority. Oh God, look at the look of this guy. These people down here, these people anchoring out. Oh my God! And they bring their dogs, and they bring their trash floats in once a week. A can floats in, a Miller Genuine Draft. If you had to spend a week in San Francisco, who would you rather hang out with? This guy or the guy coming up next that represents the authority? Could you imagine the stories that this guy could tell you, say, living in Richardson Bay for 15 or 20 years? Or where was he before that? Vietnam or the Korean War? Could you imagine what they have to tell? And then you have this sort of, oh God, look at this guy. And she stepped on the ball. Theta Chi, anytime you wish. That's that. I guess I get that wrong from Trading Places. I'm still a member of this club. We don't want to buy your drugs here, Louie. Look at this guy. Would you like to have a nice detailed San Francisco and Sacramento tax conversation with me over a dry martini? That's a beautiful head of hair, though, on a 45 to 50-year-old man. He looks about 80, but that's just the way he looks. That head of hair made up for a lot of lost looks. I've only seen George Michael sport a better head of hair, and he's outside too. I was going to just make a joke and say I covet that. If Matt, you'd take that head of hair, I'd much rather be bald like I am. I don't want to deal with hair anymore. But no, but you don't want to care about. Who cares about my attitude on hair? That's not what this video is about. Listen to how smart this guy is.
Everyone out here that I know is careful. Most of the crap that comes out floating around on the water, milk cartons and beer bottles and stuff like that, comes from the people who come down on weekends to use their expensive pleasure boats, and they don't suppose it matters. Most of the crap comes out of the marinas. The people who live out here habitually are, some of them, meticulous, fastidious. I've been on the bay out here for 30 years now. I think maybe when I anchored the Promise out here, I may have been one of a precursor of coming events for sure. The Promise was a little Navy whaleboat, 26 foot long. I anchored out here with it in 1960. And they told me, you can't do that. You spoil our view. And I said, you're mistaken. I says, I'm part of your view. This is navigable water and navigable vessel. And I says, and you have no choice if you dislike me here but to ignore me. And I said, if you ignore me, I says, I'll do the same favor. I'll ignore you in return. And right away they saw a bargain was worth striking. and that basically the same night will prevail here. Oh, many people for different reasons sympathize with the idea of putting a boat together and maintaining that kind of a dream. It takes years to put a good boat together and make it work right. But then there are other people who just resent folks who live so close to where it costs them so much. We were living here before all that expensive stuff was thrust in here. Now they're resenting the fact that some of us are still living here. And over there you look at Strawberry Point. All those houses over there are crammed so close together. They're a huge, bizarre collection of architecture. And the poor people, those houses are too large for single-family dwellings. So close to each other, you can't throw a bucket of piss out your window without staining your neighbor's wall. And all those folks look down and dislike us for being unsightly. It's really bizarre. It's really bizarre. The very fact that people on the land can complain about boats and have their complaint heard is a condemnation of governmental process. The betraying of the public trust is the government, not the people. The government is put together by the people to facilitate, not to forbid this kind of activity. Anything people have to do in order to sustain themselves and keep their lives together should be promoted and nurtured.
Now, there's two sides to this story, guys. Two sides. I know it's easy just to pile on and say, always say the government's wrong, always every sort of authority's wrong, the anarchists are always right. It's not that simple. You know what we should consider ourselves more than anything else? Reasonable people. After all we've seen and all the research we've done, we're a little arrogant, no doubt. We consider ourselves superior to your cousins and your friends and people that fall for the charade of politics and dig in with the Republicans and dig in with the Democrats. And, oh, are you going to watch the presidential debate tonight? Are you going to watch the State of the Union address? Do we feel we're superior to those people? Sure we do. It's okay. We are in that way. We don't fall for the tricks, but there's two sides to this story, folks. I'm going to take a look at that building. Just oh my God, Matt's going to take a little bit of the side of the authority and the government. Remember, we're reasonable people. Before all else, we should consider ourselves reasonable. There has to be some sort of limits. So let's just say, everybody that lives in a house like that's an evil person. Let's just say, I don't know, your Aunt Ginny, whatever, left you $3 million and you always wanted to live in Richardson Bay. And you're a nice person, still a truth researcher, and you buy this home. Okay. No, everybody's evil. No, see, it's not. If you dig in on one side in an intransigent fashion, that's not reasonable. That's a low person. If we consider ourselves advanced or superior, it should be first and foremost because we're reasonable people that can see all sides, even if we favor the side, of course, of the anchor outs. So the house I just showed, okay, your Aunt Ginny leaves you some money. You always wanted to live in the San Francisco Bay area. You buy the house. Now, a few weeks after you move in, let's just say this anchor out. See, it's not even a navigable craft. Let's just say this person starts building this floaty 4 feet off your dock, maybe 4 inches. It's all international. It's navigable water, right? They should have complete rights. Just 4 inches off your dock, somebody starts building this, whatever this is, on styrofoam. Maybe just 2 feet away, and they smoke cigars. They're just right there. Is that? Would you consider that reasonable? Say, well, nothing I can do. It's all consider the waterways, and hey, if 4,000 shanty towns move in and they make themselves like a gigantic an army of. I mean, there's nothing that ever can be done. There's no middle ground. It's easy for us as truth researchers to always pile on. And anarchists are always with the side of the freedom lovers. And we will always be 95% on the side of these people. But at some point, some people collecting mountains of trash or that person with the barges, at some point, it is reasonable to say a reasonable authority is actually not the worst thing in the world. And the trolls will clip that out. Oh, listen to what Matt's Poe, he's for government. Oh my God. Now, this isn't the greatest example or parallel, but it gets the job done. It gets the point across. You see from my videos, I have trees and bushes, and I've talked about the big trees that are all around here. What if there was a loophole, just a loophole in the law somewhere that the trees don't, up in the tree does not count as property? And do you know where I'm going with this? I don't. This is bizarre, but just go with people. As long as they could go tree to tree, swing like Tarzan, and build up in the trees, it's not technically my property here. It's not my land. So that tree right there, there's a shanty town that's built at the top of the chestnut oak there, and then the chestnut oak or the red oak about 20 feet off to the left. There's all sorts of tree houses built up there, and they're living up there like Robin Hood. And there's 50 people living on my ground up in the trees, and that's like the waterways. As long as they can go tree to tree, there's nothing I can do. Is that reasonable? See, okay, you didn't love the example, but it gets the point across. No, that's not reasonableness needs to come into play here. And I'll give you what I would propose, a middle ground. Of course, I'm going to favor the anchor outs. Actually, before we talk about reasonable solutions and what normally would have happened in a negotiation between reasonable groups if not Nilk wasn't here, let me just tell you what actually happened. I should have mentioned this earlier. They put together some sort of living allowance or fund to get people into housing. They showed in the follow-up documentary was made by that same guy 7 months ago. He showed one person was thrilled to finally get off the water and to have a real shower, and was thrilled that the money was set aside so the person was moved into an apartment. Of course, 95% of them didn't want to be kicked out of the bay, which they considered to be their home. But what's the problem? Well, the problem is, of course, it's not Nilk. Not Nilk is very nasty. At some point, the housing fund will run out, or the person will, be given. It didn't say there was a timeline on it. It didn't give the specifics. But you know what's going to happen? 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, the person will get a letter that the fund set aside is run out, and now you're responsible, who lived on Richardson Bay. You're responsible for the $2,100 a month in rent, or whatever it may be, a small little place. And I mean, at the minimum, if there's no rent control, I mean, it's going to easily, for the smallest of places in San Francisco, going to be over $2,000 a month. Even some sort of rent control, and if the person gets a letter that was formerly living on Richardson Bay saying now you have to pay $800 a month, they don't have any way to make that money. They can't call their stockbroker and say, okay, divest out of the Disney Corporation into my cash account because I now have to pay rent. Okay, they don't have any money. Of course, this is what Not Nilk is going to do to these people. They're not going to pay their rents for 5 or 10 or 15 years, or it'll run out and the people will be left out in the cold. Of course, it's just how the Not Nilk has to do business. Okay, these 2 pictures coming up are really good examples to discuss reasonableness. Now you have a craft like this that's completely jury-rigged, but it's navigable, if that's a word. It sails, it moves around, it floats, and then you have stuff like this. That's not if that's a word, navigable craft. You can't sail that to the lower Antilles. That probably wouldn't make it either. But at least it's a boat. It floats. It can move. I think that's the first step in reasonableness. Now, there's a certain segment of the truth community. Oh, Matt, if you're not taking the sides of the anchor outs 100%, I knew this guy wasn't one of us. No, let's just dig in without all of, let's just not see the other side at all. There'll be a hardcore truth or Gestapo that takes that side against me. And no form of, and when I say meet in the middle, that's just a way of saying something. Just give the Richardson Bay reach around and the people that live on the hills something. So to me, here's what the solution that makes a lot of sense. It has to be a boat. Okay, that's not a lot to ask. It has to be a craft that can move. That's like a boat. It can't just be a pile of styrofoam off the end of a dock and some boards and some plywood. No, that's not reasonable. Okay, so it has to be a boat of some kind, even a jury-rigged boat. Maybe once a year, the authority has to prove it can move. It can either sail or it has a motor, but it must move and it must float. It must be considered a boat. I think that's reasonable. maybe when I did the first video, and I didn't really realize it either. I didn't watch as much as I've watched recently. A lot of these are not boats. I mean, literally, it's just somebody that's got wood and plywood. Most are boats, okay? But there are some that it's just like what I showed you. Just every jury-rigged piece of junk, and that's rare, but these situations exist. So to me, it has to be a boat, and I don't, in terms of any who would, I do believe that the navigable waters, the waterways should be complete and utter freedom. But you could have this community police itself in Richardson Bay. Okay, number one, it has to be a boat. Two, it has to be 100 yards. Richardson Bay, it's all relatively shallow, 8 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. The whole 100 yards off in the water. Off, so you can't put it 5 feet away from somebody's home or somebody's dock. 100 yards out or whatever is reasonable. It has to be out in the middle of the bay. And someone say, well, what law? If things were real and the laws were actually written by the people and by people that really care, what law exists that's going to force us to do that? And you could have this community police themselves. If the authority figures weren't just assholes and Richardson Bay reach-arounds, and they were just reasonable people over the past 30 years, you'd have community leaders in this community. The anchor-outs would have a few people they designate. You'd say, come up with your city council. They would designate 5 people, like the council in the Matrix in Zion. And you'd say, look, you need to self-police your own here. Just stay 100 yards offshore or 50 yards or whatever is reasonable. And see, that way, if you guys will self-police your own. Because if not, then the full force of unlimited deep pockets of government and authority and administration and rules and code and ordinance and statute and law, it's the same thing, but it sounds better if you say it as 2 different words, then all this stuff's going to come down. If you guys police yourselves, make sure there's no trash. We'll even provide we'll bring a truck up once a week for your trash. We'll work with you. If you police yourselves, we'll leave you alone. This is the reason, the agreements that reasonable men and women would make working together. But we do this thing called not milk. If you're new here, there's no way that the authority of California, whether it be city ordinance or the Richardson Bay Authority or San Francisco or the local city council and mayor of Larkspur, Tiburon, or Sausalito, these towns, to get into government in California, you have to be on some sort of download. You have to, in a way, be working for the not milk. Meaning, if you're on that frequency of the not milk, a bad guy that can never be pointed to, you're not capable, because you serve not milk, of a reasonable solution with the anchor outs. It'll never happen because the not milk doesn't like people that are, remember our verb, we forgot the most important part of this video. I should have mentioned the first 30 seconds. They don't like people that are verb freedoming. Remember the greatest part of that little clip of the last time I did a video on this, that documentary? This is one of the greatest things of all time, and I forgot about it until the end. Guy's driving by, and he sees the boats living out in Richardson Bay. He's driving by in the late 70s or early 80s, telling the story as how he got involved in it. And he said, boy, those people are, he used it as a verb, those people are freedoming pretty hard down there. I want to be part of that. That's how he got involved with. Those people are freedoming pretty hard down there. How did we forget that? It's the greatest part of what came out of the last video. So the not milk is never going to work with people that are freedoming pretty hard. No, it doesn't like that. It's going to move to destroy that through its politicians, through its city council, through its lawyers and attorneys. Of course, they all serve it because they're on the frequency of it, quite literally, in my opinion. So, of course, this Matt, your pie in the sky idea that there could have been a middle ground. Of course, it's pie in the. Of course, it'll never happen. Not milk's not capable of it. I'm just saying, if the world were real, and there wasn't this evil force influencing city councils and mayors and politicians and Sacramento representatives and the Congress and Senate of California's in Sacramento, those in Sydney and Melbourne didn't know that. Now, did you? If anything were real, these common sense solutions would actually be the way of the world. instead of not just trying to crush everything and like this situation. I'm just saying there is the authority has or those that the authority that represents the people that live on the shore. It does have maybe it's only 90-10, but it does have a ground to stand on. The first grade truth or the intransigent truth, or it's 100% for the anchor out, 0 for the authority. That's just not reasonable. So again, you live there. Your aunt lived there. Your aunt died, and now you live there. She sent you the deed or whatever it is. The will shows up, and here's the attorney for the aunt saying the house on Richardson Bay is now left to I state your name. I state your name. And somebody's got a huge styrofoam house 5 inches away from your dock. That's not reasonable. And I know most of you see that, but there'll be some truth research Gestapo that then they'll even consider this as me supporting government. Really? Thanks for listening, guys.